All right, today I'm going to cover some live streaming of AWS CodeWhisperer, which is a generative AI tool that helps you do pair programming. It's very similar to GitHub Copilot, which has really the first market share. But there's some interesting things you can do with CodeWhisperer that are unique in that it is designed for AWS code. So if you're building on the platform, I think one of the things that is helpful is to know that you've got a tool that is designed to help you write AWS code. So in many ways, it's hard to compete with that if you're another AI pair programming tool because you don't have access to the proprietary code of AWS. So there's some pretty interesting things here going on with CodeWhisperer. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen here first, and let's go ahead and take a look at a Visual Studio overview here. So we have Visual Studio Code. I've got an empty repo. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do is double check that I've got everything installed. So what do I need to do? Well, first up, we need to have something called AWS Toolkit installed. I've already got this installed. You can see this is in Visual Studio Code here. This is enabled globally, and this is going to have the ability to do real-time code suggestions. And also it's optimized for use with AWS services, including things like Lambda, etc. If you put the AWS credentials inside. And also this is pretty interesting as you can do security scans. So you can scan your code to detect things like hard to find vulnerabilities, etc. So pretty interesting tool here. And if we go to this icon here, look, I can look at AWS. So let's go ahead and dive into what that does. So we have CodeWhisperer here, and notice that it says resume auto suggestions. I might have paused it temporarily. Let's go ahead and turn it back on. And now we've got auto suggestions. And what I'm going to do here next is go ahead and open up a new terminal. I typically have terminals when I'm developing inside of Visual Studio Code. And we have a blank repo here. So if I just type in git remote -v, you can see that we've got an empty repo ready to go. So one of the things I heard that you can do with AWS CodeWhisperer is actually build shell commands. So that's one thing that would be kind of fun to play around with. And also, I heard a little bit of information about being able to, really get a customized experience for AWS code as well. So we could try out a couple different ideas and see what it does. So I think maybe the first thing we can do is double check the location we're in and maybe try out a bash example first here. So we can create a directory. We can say mixture AWS bash. How about that? And I'm going to cd into there. Go ahead and try something. Let's just say, S3 bucket lister or something like that. Bucket lister .sh. And if I go to this directory, let's go ahead and put a comment that says something like, connection to AWS Builder. I need to log back in again. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in. I'm going to do this in another window and log back in. And this should re-authenticate me to what I've already got going. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so I was able to log in there, which is nice, and that should allow me to use CodeWhisperer. So that is something that you'll need to make sure that you have enabled, is the login to basically the use CodeWhisperer, which is called AWS Builder. So I'm still getting a little bit of might have been an ad blocker, could have been an issue. we'll see here. So it looks like I should be logged in. Let's try again one more time here. Copy code. I'm going to open this in another window, paste it in. There we go. I think I got it. Yeah, so there's just an authentication process here to get this thing cooking. Okay, so now that it looks like I've got it, we're gonna try to do some bash here. So we'll say list bucket. Yeah, how about that? List all the files in an S3 directory account. How about actually an account? Now, one thing I want to make sure of is that I disable Copilot temporarily. So I'm going to disable this thing so that I'm actually using the suggestions. I'm not having like competing suggestions here. So let's go ahead and try that. And let's see what happens. Oh, there we go. So pretty pretty funny. List all the files in an account. So it gives me one potential solution here. So, and if I type in this, there we go. We can see that actually works. So that is actually pretty useful. I mean, even if you were going to try to discover commands, maybe like that would be kind of an interesting one. So maybe I even change this and say, we'll call this like useful AWS S3 command. How about that? We'll make this into, and we'll just say, here, which would be list buckets. There we go. Now, what else would be interesting to do using CodeWhisperer? And I can even put a note here that says suggestions from AWS CodeWhisperer. Right? So we can see this is not using Copilot because Copilot is inactive. And what else might be interesting to do? How about list AWS Lambdas? Or no, actually, I'm sticking with S3 for now. So we'll say list all objects in account in S3. I don't know if it's smart enough to do that. Let's see. Well, that's not exactly what I want. Doesn't seem like exactly like what I want. So maybe I have to give it a little more help. How about lists all objects in a bucket? How about list all objects in a bucket? How about that? And well, first we need to find the bucket. So we'll say AWS S3 LS. There we go. So how about this one? And say spot jobs output, or how about let me find a bucket that might have some good stuff in there. Like how about Fang sentiment? That might be interesting. Bucket called bucket. We'll call this. So we'll see what it gives me here. AWS S3. Okay, looks like that might work. So maybe there's nothing in that bucket. I guess I could actually help it out if I go to S3. I can try to find a bucket. This is kind of a test account, so there may not. Oh, here we go. In NBA AutoML. So we'll do that one. We'll do NBA AutoML. How about that? And go here. Okay. So, I mean, it definitely seems to be pretty good at finding commands. So that's. I guess I got a little bit of stuff done here. Let me check this in, and we'll just say go up a directory. Actually, I can just say git status. Say git add S3 bucket lister. There we go. We'll check this in. So we'll say adding -S3 example. But what if we wanted to do maybe like Lambda commands, right? So we'll say touch AWS Lambda message. So let's see if we can find some stuff we can do from this. We can say like Lambda, AWS Lambda assisted code whisperer. So we can try to find out all of the Lambda functions in my account. Okay, let's see what it says. Okay. So, I mean, this is actually, I mean, even for documentation purposes, if you're just trying to figure out how maybe a new service works on AWS, I mean, this is actually pretty interesting. I think this is a good style. So, I mean, so far, I would say it's probably a very good idea to use this as a way to explore your account or figure out a new service, etc. So that works. So I'll go ahead and check that one in. Say get status. Add this one. Add AWS Lambda. Add this one. Adding Lambda. Let's see how it does with something a little bit trickier, because I know that they're working on Rust support here, but it's not great. See, do I have Rust handy in my account? Okay, so we have Rust here. Now, I would be curious if I create like a new Rust project with the SDK. That could be one way to do it. Let's try that. We'll just say cargo new S3 list or something like that, S3 list. And I would be curious if it's smart enough to know to put the SDK in there. I'm going to have to probably put that in there. AWS SDK Rust. And I believe it's going to, I'm just going to look at, so it's going to be something like this. But it's in this case, we want it to be S3. Let's do, there we go, S3. How about that? That looks like that could work. Now, I don't know if it needs AWS config. And then if I go here, so it wants me to do a cargo run. Just, well, I need to cd into S3 list. If we type in cargo run, it says, we didn't find SDK S3. So I'm going to have to find really quick here using the SDK for credentials and regions. Looking through here for the information about AWS SDK here. So let's try this. AWS SDK Rust S3. Let me see an example here. Okay, we're going to find list buckets. That's kind of the easy one. And I'm going to find how to actually access SDK. Here we go. This is what I need. So I'm going to have to throw this in there. Is this different? Okay, that is a little bit different. I think that was the issue. So let's rebuild this thing. And this should install all of the dependencies for the projects. It does look like it's the Rust analyzer here is, oh, there we go. We got it woken up. And then if I go here, I could just put some instruction that says build an S3 lister script. Just curious how smart it is. It looks like it definitely has one-line request capabilities. Okay, here we go. Async list objects. Wow. So it gave me a full function suggestion, which is pretty awesome. So we got list objects here. Let's see how good these are, though. So I don't know, what is this? Unresolved import Rusto. That doesn't seem like that's what I want. I probably want something. I'm just going to copy their docs and then let it go from there. So I'm going to say, let's see, we'll just say build a script to list the buckets in my S3 account. Okay. That looks good. That looks good. So this is the main boilerplate, and we'll just say list buckets. Let's see how smart it is. So, okay. So it says let response client. That looks good. And then we're going to need to print the buckets. So we're going to need to take that response object, unwrap it, and then basically say for every, it looks like that would work. Let's see here. So cargo run. There you go. Wow, that's shockingly good. So I think we have a contender here for competition with AWS Copilot or GitHub Copilot. I mean, this is very compelling. So I'm going to go ahead and check this in, and I think my weekly live stream of CodeWhisperer could get very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and check this in here. Get status. Get add S3 lists. Rust lister. Okay, so really the takeaway here is that I believe this is a very compelling workflow to use AWS CodeWhisperer for writing AWS code. And you can see the one I was the most scared about, which was Rust. Actually, CodeWhisperer did extremely well as long as you gave it the right prompt. Like if you give it the official documentation from AWS and then you basically do some prompts, it does appear to have some very good coding ability in the Rust language. So pretty impressive. So I'll be back next week and I'll dive back into CodeWhisperer again, same time as this week. Talk to you later.